What if a single act of kindness could change your life forever? On a stormy day, a young girl named Lily handed her bright yellow umbrella to a stranger, never expecting to see him again. Years later, that simple gesture returns to her in a way she could never have imagined. From a chance encounter on a rainy day to a life-altering opportunity, discover how one small moment of compassion transformed everything. The clouds had been gathering all afternoon, dark and heavy, hanging low in the sky like a thick, gray blanket. The air felt damp, charged with the promise of rain, but it wasn't until school let out that the heavens finally opened. The downpour was sudden and fierce, as if the sky had finally given up trying to hold itself together. Lily stood at the edge of the school's front steps, peering out into the storm. At 12 years old, she was a small figure, with a backpack slung over one shoulder and a bright yellow umbrella clutched tightly in her hand. The other kids had already scattered, running off in every direction, their umbrellas bobbing up and down like colorful mushrooms in the rain. For a moment, she hesitated, watching the rain bounce off the pavement, forming little rivers along the cracks in the sidewalk. Her mother had always told her to wait out storms if she could, but something about this one felt different. There was a wildness to it, a sense that it wasn't going to let up anytime soon. With a sigh, she popped open the umbrella and stepped out into the deluge. The yellow umbrella provided a small circle of dryness in an otherwise soaking world. It was a cheerful thing, standing out vividly against the grayness all around. Lily had chosen it herself, a gift from her parents on her last birthday. It made her feel safe, like a piece of sunshine she could carry with her on even the darkest days. As she walked, the rain drummed on the umbrella above her, a steady, rhythmic sound that filled the silence of the empty street. The city had taken on a different character under the storm, a quieter, more introspective one. The usual hustle and bustle of cars and people were muted, reduced to the occasional splash of a car passing by or the distant rumble of thunder. Lily's shoes splashed through puddles, her feet cold and wet despite the umbrella's protection. She kept her head down, watching the water swirl around her feet, lost in her own thoughts. It was only when she turned the corner onto a less familiar street that she saw him. He was standing under the awning of a small, run-down store, the kind that sold everything from old magazines to dusty cans of soup. He was tall and thin, his clothes hanging off him as if he'd lost too much weight too quickly. The rain had soaked him completely, his hair plastered to his head, and his shoes making a squelching sound with every small movement. He looked cold, miserable, and alone. Lily slowed her pace, her heart tugged by the sight of him. The man wasn't much older than her father, maybe in his late 30s or early 40s, but there was something weary about him, as if life had worn him down more than it should have. His eyes, when he finally looked up, were dark and sad, reflecting the storm around them. For a moment, their eyes met, and Lily felt a strange connection, a fleeting understanding that went beyond words. She hesitated, unsure of what to do. The man was a stranger, and her mother had always warned her about talking to people she didn't know. But he didn't seem dangerous, just lost. She could feel the rain dripping off her coat, sneaking in under her collar, and she shivered. The man was still looking at her, his expression one of quiet desperation, as if he was hoping for something, anything, to change the course of his day. Maybe even his life. Lily glanced down at the umbrella in her hand, then back up at the man. Her heart raced as she made a decision. Taking a deep breath, she stepped closer, extending the yellow umbrella toward him. "Here," she said, her voice small but clear against the sound of the rain. "You can use this." The man blinked, surprised. "What?" "The umbrella," she repeated, holding it out to him. "You need it more than I do." He stared at her for a long moment, as if he couldn't quite believe what she was saying. Then, slowly, he reached out and took the umbrella from her hand. His fingers brushed against hers, his skin was cold, and the brief contact made her shiver again. You're giving this to me?" he asked, his voice rough, as though he hadn't spoken to anyone in days. Lily nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Yeah. It's just an umbrella. I can walk the rest of the way home without it." The man looked down at the umbrella in his hand, then back at Lily. There was something softening in his eyes, the sadness lifting just a little. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Lily replied, stepping back a little, suddenly feeling shy. "Just take care of it, okay? It's my favorite one." The man nodded, holding the umbrella as if it were something precious. "I will," he promised, his voice steadying. "I'll take good care of it." Lily gave him one last smile before turning and walking away, her small form quickly disappearing into the rain. Without the umbrella, the storm hit her full force, soaking her clothes and making her shiver from the cold. But despite the discomfort, there was a warmth in her chest, a sense of satisfaction that made the rest of the walk home bearable. As she rounded the corner onto her street, Lily couldn't help but glance back, even though she knew she wouldn't see the man from where she was. She wondered if he was still standing there, under that little awning, watching her walk away. She hoped that the umbrella would help him, even just a little, to get through the rest of the day. The rain continued to pour, relentless and unforgiving, but Lily felt lighter somehow, as if she'd done something important. The yellow umbrella was gone, but the feeling it left behind was more than enough to keep her warm. When she finally reached her house, drenched and shivering, her mother scolded her for being out in the storm without an umbrella. But Lily just smiled, her thoughts far away, on a quiet street and a man with sad eyes. She never told her mother about the man, or the umbrella, or the strange connection she felt in that brief moment. It became a secret memory, tucked away in her heart, a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness could mean the world to someone else. Lily didn't know it then, but that simple gesture, the gift of a yellow umbrella on a rainy day, would come back to her in ways she could never have imagined. For now, though, it was just a memory, one that she would carry with her as she grew up, a small light in the back of her mind. And in the years to come, when life became difficult and she found herself facing her own storms, she would think back to that day, to the man with the sad eyes, and the way the world seemed just a little brighter because of her small, yellow umbrella. The years passed like the turning of pages in a book, each one bringing new challenges, new experiences, and new memories. Lily grew up in the same small town where she had once given her yellow umbrella to a stranger. The town, nestled in a valley surrounded by rolling hills, was a place where everyone knew everyone else, where the streets were lined with familiar faces and where the seasons came and went with a predictable rhythm. By the time she was in her late teens, Lily had outgrown many of the things that had once been central to her world. The little yellow umbrella, for instance, was no longer something she thought about often. It had been years since that rainy day, and the memory of the man she had helped had faded into the background of her busy life. High school was demanding, with its endless stream of exams, assignments, and social dramas. Friends came and went, relationships formed and broke apart, and all the while, the future loomed ahead, uncertain and intimidating. Lily wasn't sure what she wanted to do with her life. College was the obvious next step, but the thought of leaving her hometown, of stepping into a world where everything was unfamiliar, filled her with a mixture of excitement and fear. She applied to several universities, more out of obligation than any real desire, and waited anxiously for responses. Her parents were supportive, as always, encouraging her to follow her heart, to chase whatever dreams she might have. But that was the problem, Lily wasn't sure what her dreams were. She felt adrift, like a leaf caught in the wind, carried along by forces she couldn't control or understand. The day the acceptance letters started arriving, Lily felt a strange numbness. She knew she should be excited, this was what she had been working towards for years, but instead, all she felt was uncertainty. The letters were filled with congratulations and promises of a bright future, but to Lily, they seemed like doors to places she wasn't sure she wanted to go. One evening, as she sat at the kitchen table with a stack of letters in front of her, her father walked in. He was a quiet man, more comfortable fixing things around the house than offering advice, but he had a way of knowing when something was bothering her. "Any news?" he asked, nodding towards the letters. Lily shrugged. "A few acceptances. A couple of wait lists. One rejection." Her father pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. "And how do you feel about it?" She looked down at her hands, tracing the grain of the wooden table with her fingers. "I don't know. I guess I'm just unsure." "Unsure about what?" "Everything," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what I want to do, or where I want to go. I don't even know if I'm making the right decisions." Her father was silent for a moment, considering her words. Then, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "You know, when I was your age, I didn't have it all figured out either. I made a lot of decisions that didn't make sense at the time. But looking back, I can see that each choice, each step, led me to where I am now. And where I am now, well, it's not so bad." Lily smiled faintly. Her father's life was simple, grounded in the routines of work and family, but she knew he was content. He had found his place in the world, even if it wasn't one filled with grand adventures or wild ambitions. "Maybe you don't need to have it all figured out right now," he continued. "Maybe it's okay to take things one step at a time. To let the future unfold, rather than trying to force it into a shape you're not sure of." Lily nodded slowly, letting his words sink in. I don't want to end up stuck, you know? I don't want to look back and feel like I missed out on something important." "You won't," her father assured her. "You're too thoughtful for that. Whatever path you choose, you'll make it work. And if you don't like where you end up, you can always change direction. Life's funny that way, sometimes the detours turn out to be the best parts." That night, after her parents had gone to bed, Lily sat by her bedroom window, looking out at the darkened street. The town was quiet, the only sound the distant hum of crickets and the occasional car passing by. She thought about her father's words, about the idea of letting life unfold naturally, without trying to control every outcome. Her mind drifted back to that rainy day, to the man she had helped without thinking, simply because it felt like the right thing to do. It had been a small act of kindness, one that she hadn't expected anything from. But in that moment, she had felt a sense of purpose, a clarity that had been missing lately. Maybe that was what she needed now, a reminder that life wasn't always about grand plans or perfectly executed steps. Sometimes, it was about the little things, the moments that happened by chance, the connections that formed without warning. As she drifted off to sleep, Lily felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in a while. The future was still uncertain, but maybe that was okay. She didn't have to have all the answers right now. She could take it one step at a time, trusting that the path would reveal itself as she walked it. In the weeks that followed, Lily made her decision. She chose a university that wasn't too far from home but offered enough new experiences to challenge her. It wasn't the most prestigious or the most exciting option, but it felt right. And that, she realized, was enough. The summer before college passed in a blur of preparations and goodbyes. Lily spent time with her friends, savoring the last days of their shared childhoods. They talked about their hopes and fears, about the excitement of starting something new, and the sadness of leaving things behind. When the day finally came for Lily to leave, her parents helped her load up the car. There were hugs and tears, promises to stay in touch, and a final, lingering look at the house she had called home for so long. As she drove away, the town receded in the rearview mirror, becoming smaller and smaller until it was just a memory. College was everything Lily had hoped for and more. The campus was vibrant, filled with people from all walks of life, each with their own stories, their own dreams. Lily threw herself into her studies, eager to learn and grow. She made new friends, joined clubs, and even found herself in a few unexpected adventures. But despite the excitement, there were moments when she felt lost, when the world seemed too big and her place in it too small. In those moments, she would think back to her father's words, to the man with the yellow umbrella, and remind herself that it was okay not to have it all figured out. Life was a journey, not a destination, and sometimes the best things happened when you least expected them. As the seasons changed and the leaves turned from green to gold, Lily settled into her new life. The uncertainty was still there, but it no longer scared her. It was a part of the adventure, a reminder that the future was wide open, filled with possibilities she couldn't yet see. And somewhere, in the back of her mind, the memory of that rainy day remained, a quiet, persistent reminder that kindness, even the smallest kind, had a way of coming back to you in ways you could never imagine. Lily had been living in the city for almost 2 years when it happened. By then, she was no longer the uncertain girl who had left her small town behind. College had changed her in ways she hadn't anticipated. It had opened her eyes to a world full of possibilities, a world where she could redefine herself, where she could become anyone she wanted to be. But even with all the new experiences, all the late-night study sessions, new friendships, and the heady rush of independence, there were still moments of doubt. It was on one of those days, a gray, drizzly afternoon in early spring, that Lily found herself wandering the city streets aimlessly. The rain was light, barely more than a mist, but it was enough to keep most people indoors, leaving the streets quieter than usual. Lily liked it that way. The city, normally so full of noise and movement, felt almost peaceful in the rain. She had left her apartment that morning with no particular destination in mind, just a vague need to clear her head. The semester had been tough, harder than she had expected, and she was feeling the weight of it. Her classes were demanding, her part-time job at a local cafe left her exhausted, and the future, once a distant concept, was now looming closer with each passing day. Lily's feet carried her through familiar streets and into areas she didn't know as well. She didn't pay much attention to where she was going, lost in thought as she walked. It wasn't until she looked up and realized that she didn't recognize the buildings around her that she started to pay attention. The street was lined with old, brick buildings, their windows darkened by the overcast sky. There was a stillness here, a sense that time had slowed down, leaving this part of the city untouched by the bustle just a few blocks away. She paused in front of a tall, glass building that seemed out of place among the older structures. It was sleek, modern, and entirely unfamiliar. The entrance was marked by a simple sign bearing the name of a company she vaguely recognized. It was a name she had seen somewhere before, but she couldn't quite place it. Curiosity tugged at her, and before she knew it, Lily found herself stepping inside. The lobby was quiet, almost eerily so. It was sparsely decorated, with clean lines and minimalist furniture, giving it a cold, impersonal feel. A receptionist sat behind a large, curved desk, typing away at a computer. She looked up as Lily approached, her expression polite but distant. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked, her voice calm and professional. Lily hesitated, unsure of what to say. She had come in on a whim, drawn by something she couldn't quite explain. Now, standing in the sterile, silent lobby, she felt out of place, like she didn't belong here. I think I applied for a job here a while back," Lily said, her voice uncertain. It was true, she had applied to several companies in the city, looking for internships or part-time positions, but she hadn't heard back from most of them. The receptionist's expression softened slightly, and she nodded. "What's your name?" "Lily Thompson." The receptionist typed Lily's name into the computer, her fingers moving quickly over the keyboard. After a moment, she looked up, her expression shifting to one of mild surprise. "It seems you have an appointment with the CEO." Lily blinked, taken aback. "I do?" "Yes, it's noted here in the system. If you'll wait just a moment, I'll let him know you're here." Lily nodded, her mind racing. She hadn't made any appointment. There had to be some kind of mistake. But before she could say anything, the receptionist was already on the phone, speaking quietly into the receiver. Lily felt a strange sense of unease. She hadn't expected this, hadn't planned for it. She had just wanted to escape her thoughts for a little while, not walk into something like this. After what felt like an eternity, the receptionist hung up the phone and smiled at Lily. "He's ready to see you now. If you'll follow me." Lily followed the receptionist down a long hallway, her heart pounding in her chest. The building was eerily quiet, the only sound the soft echo of their footsteps on the polished floor. They stopped in front of a large, wooden door at the end of the hallway, and the receptionist knocked softly before pushing it open. Inside was a spacious, elegantly decorated office with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of the city skyline. Behind a large, mahogany desk sat a man, his back to the door as he gazed out the window. He was tall, with broad shoulders, and his hair was streaked with gray. Something about his silhouette struck Lily as familiar, though she couldn't place why. "Mr. Harper, your guest is here," the receptionist announced before quietly excusing herself and closing the door behind her. The man turned in his chair, and Lily's breath caught in her throat. It was him, the man from that rainy day so many years ago. He looked older, of course, but there was no mistaking those deep, sad eyes. They were the same eyes that had looked at her with such gratitude when she had handed him her yellow umbrella. "Lily Thompson," he said, his voice warm and rich, but tinged with something she couldn't quite identify. "I've been waiting a long time to meet you again." Lily stood frozen, her mind racing to make sense of what was happening. She had never expected to see him again, never imagined that their brief encounter would lead to something like this. "You remember me?" "Of course I do," he replied, standing up and walking around the desk to stand in front of her. "How could I forget the girl who gave me an umbrella on one of the worst days of my life?" Lily's heart raced as she tried to find her voice. I didn't think you'd remember. It was just a small thing, a long time ago." "Small to you, maybe," he said, a gentle smile on his lips. "But to me, it was much more than that. It was a kindness I never expected, and one I've never forgotten." He gestured to a comfortable-looking chair by the window. "Please, sit. We have much to talk about." Lily moved to the chair, feeling like she was in a dream. She sat down, trying to steady her breathing, her mind still reeling from the shock of seeing him again. As she settled into the chair, he took the seat across from her, his gaze never leaving hers. "I'm sure you have many questions," he began, leaning forward slightly. "And I'll answer them all in time. But first, I want to thank you, Lily. What you did that day, it changed my life." She shook her head, still struggling to understand. "I don't see how." "I mean, it was just an umbrella." "Sometimes, it's the smallest acts that make the biggest difference," he said quietly. "At that time in my life, I was lost. I had just lost my job, my family was falling apart, and I didn't see much point in anything anymore. Then, out of nowhere, you came along with that bright yellow umbrella, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe things could get better. You reminded me that there were still good people in the world, and that maybe, just maybe, I could turn things around." Lily listened, stunned by the weight of his words. She had never known, never imagined that her small gesture could have had such an impact. "After that day," he continued, "I made some changes. I started looking for new opportunities, started rebuilding my life piece by piece. And now, years later, I find myself in a position where I can give back, where I can help others the way you helped me." He leaned back in his chair, his gaze softening. "Which is why I'm here today, offering you a job. It's yours if you want it, along with a mentorship that I believe will help you achieve whatever dreams you have." Lily's mind raced. A job? A mentorship? It was more than she had ever expected, more than she could have hoped for. "I don't know what to say," she murmured, overwhelmed. "You don't have to say anything now," he replied gently. "Take your time. Think it over. But know this, Lily, kindness has a way of coming back to you when you least expect it." As Lily sat there, staring out at the city she had come to call home, she realized that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't yet fathom. The path she had been searching for, the direction she had longed for, was suddenly right in front of her. And all because of a yellow umbrella on a rainy day, so many years ago. The days following her meeting with Mr. Harper felt like a whirlwind. Lily had left the tall, glass building that day in a daze, her mind buzzing with all that he had told her. She tried to process it, to make sense of how one small act of kindness had brought her to this moment. But every time she thought she had it figured out, another layer of meaning would reveal itself, leaving her feeling more overwhelmed than before. She had returned to her apartment and immediately called her parents, her voice shaking with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. They listened as she recounted the meeting, their voices warm with pride and encouragement. Her father's words, in particular, echoed in her mind, "Life has a funny way of rewarding kindness, Lily. You did something good without expecting anything in return, and now look at where it's led you. Trust that this is where you're meant to be." Those words had stayed with her as she made her decision. The offer was too good to pass up, a job at a respected company, personal mentorship from the CEO himself, and a chance to learn and grow in ways she had only dreamed of. But more than that, it was an opportunity to give back, to be a part of something bigger than herself. When Lily accepted the job, Mr. Harper's response was warm and gracious. He welcomed her into the company with open arms, ensuring that her transition would be smooth. The first few weeks were a blur of introductions, training sessions, and meetings. Everyone she met was kind and supportive, and Lily quickly found herself settling into her new role. The mentorship with Mr. Harper was unlike anything she had expected. He wasn't just a boss, he was a teacher, a guide who took a genuine interest in her development. They met regularly in his office, their conversations ranging from business strategies to personal growth. He shared his experiences, the lessons he had learned over the years, and the mistakes he had made along the way. He encouraged Lily to ask questions, to challenge herself, and to think creatively. One afternoon, a few months into her new job, Lily sat in Mr. Harper's office, listening as he talked about his early days in the business world. The sun streamed in through the large windows, casting a warm glow across the room. Outside, the city buzzed with life, but inside, the atmosphere was calm and focused. "I wasn't always successful," Mr. Harper was saying, his tone reflective. "In fact, there was a time when I felt like I was failing at everything I tried. It's easy to look at someone's success and think it came naturally, but the truth is, it often comes after a lot of failure." Lily nodded, absorbing his words. She had heard similar sentiments before, but coming from him, they carried a different weight. "What kept you going?" she asked. He smiled faintly, his gaze distant as he recalled those days. "Hope, I suppose. And the belief that things could get better if I kept trying. But if I'm being honest, there were times when I was ready to give up. That rainy day we talked about, it was one of those times." Lily leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. She had thought a lot about that day since their first meeting, wondering what had happened to Mr. Harper after she had handed him the umbrella. Now, it seemed she was about to find out. "That day," he continued, his voice softer now, "I was at a crossroads. I had just lost my job, and I was facing some personal issues that felt insurmountable. I was standing there in the rain, soaked to the bone, feeling completely defeated. And then you showed up, this little girl with a bright yellow umbrella, offering me shelter from the storm." Lily smiled, remembering how determined she had been to help him, even though she had been just a child. "I didn't realize it at the time," Mr. Harper went on, "but that moment was a turning point for me. Your kindness, your willingness to help a stranger, it reminded me that there was still good in the world, and that maybe I wasn't as alone as I felt. It was like a spark of light in the darkness, and it gave me the strength to keep going." He paused, his eyes meeting hers. "After that day, I started making changes. I reached out to people I had lost touch with, I looked for new opportunities, and slowly, I began to rebuild my life. It wasn't easy, and there were setbacks, but I kept going. And eventually, things started to turn around." Lily listened intently, her heart full as she realized the impact her small act of kindness had had on his life. It was humbling to think that something she had done without much thought had made such a difference. "But I never forgot about you, Mr. Harper said, his voice steady. "I wanted to thank you, to repay your kindness in some way, but I didn't know how. So I kept an eye on you, quietly, from a distance. I followed your progress through school, your college applications, your move to the city. When I saw your application come through for a position here, I knew it was time." Lily's eyes widened. "You've been watching me all this time?" He nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Not in a creepy way, I promise." Just keeping track. I wanted to make sure you were okay, that you were finding your way. And when the time was right, I wanted to give you the opportunity to do something meaningful, just as you had done for me. The realization of what he had done, of how he had quietly influenced her life without her even knowing, left Lily speechless. It was overwhelming, but in a good way. She had always believed in the importance of kindness, but to see it come full circle like this was something she had never imagined. "Thank you," she said finally, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how to express how much this means to me." Mr. Harper shook his head gently. "No, Lily. Thank you. You were the one who set this all in motion. I'm just glad I could be a part of your journey." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history hanging in the air. It was a connection that went beyond words, a bond forged in kindness and gratitude. As they continued to talk, Lily realized that this was just the beginning. Her journey with Mr. Harper, with the company, was still unfolding, and there were countless opportunities ahead, opportunities to grow, to learn, and to make a difference. When she left his office that day, Lily felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was no longer the unsure girl who had wandered into the city looking for direction. She was someone who had made a difference, who had touched a life in a meaningful way, and who was now being given the chance to do even more. And as she stepped out into the city, the sky beginning to clear after a light drizzle, she couldn't help but smile. She had given away a yellow umbrella years ago, never expecting anything in return. Now, she was standing at the beginning of a new chapter, her life forever changed by the kindness she had shown on a rainy day. Over the next year, Lily's life blossomed in ways she had never imagined. Her role at the company grew, and with Mr. Harper's guidance, she found herself stepping into responsibilities she hadn't thought herself capable of handling. His mentorship was more than just professional, it was personal. He taught her not just about business, but about life, about resilience, and about the power of kindness, lessons she absorbed with a sense of gratitude that deepened with each passing day. Lily's days were filled with meetings, projects, and challenges that pushed her to think creatively and strategically. She thrived in the fast-paced environment, her confidence growing as she saw the impact of her work. But it wasn't just about the success, it was about the connections she was making, the way she was able to help others in the company the way Mr. Harper had helped her. One crisp autumn morning, Lily sat in her office, reviewing a proposal she had been working on for weeks. The city outside her window was painted in shades of orange and gold, the trees shedding their leaves as the season changed. The proposal was for a new community outreach program, a project that had become close to her heart. It was an initiative to support underprivileged children in the city, providing them with the resources and mentorship they needed to succeed in school and beyond. As she read through the final draft, Lily felt a swell of pride. This was more than just a job, it was a chance to give back, to make a real difference. A knock on her door pulled her from her thoughts. She looked up to see Mr. Harper standing in the doorway, a familiar warm smile on his face. "Do you have a moment?" he asked. "Of course," Lily replied, setting the proposal aside as he entered the room. There was something different in his demeanor today, a quiet, reflective energy that Lily hadn't seen before. Mr. Harper took a seat across from her, glancing at the proposal on her desk. "Is this the outreach program you've been working on?" Lily nodded. "Yes. I'm just about ready to present it. I think it could really make a difference." He smiled, his eyes softening with approval. "I have no doubt that it will. You've put so much heart into this project, Lily. It's clear that it means a lot to you." "It does," she admitted. "I've been thinking a lot about how I got here, about everything you've done for me. And I want to pay it forward, to help others the way you helped me." Mr. Harper leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You know, Lily, that's exactly why I wanted you here. I saw in you the same spark that you showed me all those years ago. That willingness to help, to make the world a little better, one small act at a time." Lily felt a lump in her throat, emotions swelling as she considered the path her life had taken. "I just never imagined that giving someone an umbrella could lead to all of this." Mr. Harper chuckled softly. Neither did I. But life has a way of surprising us. That umbrella, it was more than just a piece of cloth and metal. It was a symbol of hope, of kindness. And look at what it's led to. There was a moment of silence between them, filled with unspoken gratitude. Then, Mr. Harper leaned forward, his tone shifting slightly. There's something I've been meaning to give you, he said, reaching into his briefcase and pulling out a small, neatly wrapped package. He handed it to her, his expression warm. Lily looked at the package, her curiosity piqued. She carefully unwrapped it, revealing a familiar sight, a brand new, bright yellow umbrella. It was identical to the one she had given him all those years ago, the same vibrant color, the same simple design. I thought you might like to have this, Mr. Harper said, his voice gentle. As a reminder of where it all started. Lily's heart swelled as she held the umbrella, the memories of that rainy day flooding back. She looked up at Mr. Harper, her eyes shining with tears she didn't bother to hide. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. This means more to me than I can say. Mr. Harper smiled, a knowing look in his eyes. You've earned it, Lily. You've come so far, and I'm proud of the person you've become. But remember, this is just the beginning. There's so much more ahead for you. Lily nodded, overwhelmed by the significance of the moment. She knew he was right. This was just one chapter in her story, a story that was still being written, with so many possibilities waiting in the pages to come. As the day ended, Lily left the office with the yellow umbrella in hand. The sky was clear, the crisp autumn air filled with the scent of falling leaves. But she didn't mind carrying the umbrella, even without the rain. It was more than just protection from the weather, it was a symbol of everything she had learned, of the kindness that had shaped her life and the lives of those around her. The city streets were busy as she walked, the evening rush hour in full swing. People hurried by, lost in their own worlds, their faces focused on the next task, the next destination. But as Lily walked, she took her time, letting the moments unfold around her. As she approached a bus stop, she noticed a young boy, no older than 7 or 8, standing by himself. He was shivering slightly, his thin jacket barely enough to keep out the chill. He looked up at the sky, as if hoping for some sign of warmth, his expression weary. Lily's heart tugged at the sight. She paused, her hand tightening around the yellow umbrella. It would be so easy, she thought, to walk by, to leave the boy to find his own way. But then she remembered Mr. Harper's words, the journey that had brought her to this moment. Without a second thought, she approached the boy, her steps purposeful but gentle. Hey, she said softly, catching his attention. Are you okay? The boy looked up at her, his eyes wide and a little uncertain. I'm waiting for the bus, he said quietly, his voice small. Do you have something warm to wear? She asked, her gaze sympathetic. The boy shook his head, his shoulders hunching slightly against the cold. No. My mom said she'll get me a new coat soon. Lily smiled, the kind of smile that carried warmth and reassurance. She held out the yellow umbrella, offering it to him. Here, take this. It's not a coat, but it might help keep you warm until the bus comes. The boy hesitated, his eyes flicking from the umbrella to her face. But, it's yours. It's okay, Lily said, her voice gentle but firm. I want you to have it. And maybe, when you're done with it, you can pass it on to someone else who needs it. The boy's face lit up with a shy smile as he reached out to take the umbrella. Thank you, he whispered, his voice filled with gratitude. You're welcome, Lily replied, her heart swelling with the familiar warmth that came from helping someone in need. She watched as the boy opened the umbrella, its bright yellow color standing out against the grayness of the city. It was a small thing, but she knew, from experience, that small things could lead to extraordinary moments. As she walked away, the boy standing under the yellow umbrella, Lily felt a sense of completion, a sense that her story had come full circle. She had started with a simple act of kindness, and now, years later, she was able to pass that kindness on, to keep the cycle going. And in that moment, she realized that the world was indeed a good place, filled with good people. Sometimes, all it took was a little bit of kindness to bring that goodness to the surface, to remind us all that we're connected, that we can make a difference in each other's lives. Lily walked home that evening with a light heart, knowing that her journey was just beginning. There would be more challenges, more opportunities, and more moments of kindness waiting for her. And she would be ready for them, with the lessons she had learned, and the bright yellow umbrella she had once given away. The world, she realized, was full of possibilities, and she was ready to embrace them all.